Hello, everyone. My name is Mayuri Barkada, and I am an accounting manager for Asset Management Ontario. After defining and setting asset level of service targets, the next step is risk assessment and prioritization. Risk is the only way diverse assets can be compared with each other, meaning a pumping station can be compared with a facility or a fleet as long as same consequence and likelihood tables are used across the organization for assessment of all asset types. This presentation is about how to use the risk assessment and prioritization models to assess organizational asset risk and priorities across asset classes, asset level of service, and individual assets. This slide will show you how the models operate. The prioritization models rank asset classes, asset levels of service, and asset priorities based on the amount of undesirable risk that is present and how far that risk varies from the desired targets. Before I show the templates, I want to share in summary how the models operate. There are three operations. Operation 1 is to identify first all the risks that exceed our target or residual risk, which means not meeting our asset level of service targets. These are then ranked based on the amount of risk, meaning the higher the risk value, the higher the priority. Our second operation, Operation 2, the risk rankings in Operation 1 are weighted and re-ranked based on how far off they are from the target risk. This is an important step to prevent critical assets being prioritized disproportionately, as typically they have higher target risk, and therefore the deviation from the target risk is less. The next one is our Operation 3. When the priorities or rankings in Operation 2 are very close or tied, the risk cost benefit may be used as an additional factor to re-rank the priorities. I will now show you what the templates look like and how these three operations work. This is what the template looks like. We have 5 templates here that we're going to be going through. The first one is asset level of service and asset class risk. This is where the risk assessment is done. The second tab is the priority model, so prioritization based on asset level of service. Tab 3 is prioritization model for asset class. Tab 4 is assessing the asset risk, each individual asset risk. And tab 5 is the priority model for assessing or prioritization of each asset. We also have consequence and likelihood tables here to refer to when we are doing our risk assessment. So we will start off with risk assessment for the asset level of service and asset class. We will start off by adding the asset class that we want to assess. Add your asset class here, and then add all the asset levels of service targets that were identified in your level of service framework, whether they be conditions, so they are color coordinated here. Condition is blue, and performance is an orange, a light orange. So add based on the asset level of service, add your condition and performance levels of targets. Once the targets are added, then add your likelihood, your target likelihood, which is the blue column. So what is the likelihood of an asset failure if your assets are meeting your target? So in this case, we say 2. So 2 basically means it's unlikely that there is going to be an asset failure. So based on your assets, add your likelihood here. Then the next step is to add the current ranges. So our target is PCI of 70, but we could have PCIs or roads that have a PCI more than 70. So here we've basically added our ranges, and it's based on the condition grades. So PCI greater than 80 would be in excellent shape. PCI between 79 and 60 would be good. PCI between 59 and 40 would be fair. 39 to 20 would be poor, and less than 20 would be very poor. So add your ranges in here and then add your asset level of service distribution. So basically, what percentage of your HCB road have a PCI of 80? So in this case, we're saying 39% of our HCB road has a PCI of 80. We have 48% that have a PCI ranging between 79 and 60, which is basically our target. The third one is we have 13% that has a PCI between 59 and 40. Now, these are basically not meeting our target. Add your likelihood here. Now, the first one, where the PCI is 80, it's exceeding our level of service. And the likelihood set, therefore, is one, basically saying very unlikely that there's going to be an asset failure. The second one, 48%, this is basically same as our target. So we've decided to put that as 2, same as the target likelihood, which is saying there is going to be unlikely that there is going to be an asset failure. The third one, which is lower than our target, we basically scored it as 3, saying there is a possibility that there is going to be an asset failure. Once the current likelihood is set, now what we want to do is add the consequences. What are the impacts to the services now? So based on our likelihood here, or based on our targets here, we want to make sure that we add our scores based on 1 to 5 using our consequence table here. We have identified 1 score as very low impact to the service, 2 being low, 3 being medium impact, 4 being high, and 5 being very high. So based on the asset failure, or if there was a malfunction or potholes or cracking, whatever the risk event is, go through that risk event and identify what the consequence is going to be. So in this case, we're saying if there was an asset failure, on the health and safety category, we're saying there is going to be a high impact to the service. On the community service, we are basically saying there is going to be a medium impact to the service. Go through all the asset categories and add your scores between 1 and 5. Once the consequence scores are added, your total consequence will be pre-populated or automatically be calculated. Once the consequence is calculated, it will also recalculate your residual or target risk. Because risk is basically a combination of consequence and likelihood. We had already added the likelihood. Now that we have the consequence, so adding this consequence and likelihood together will give us our target risk. It will also pre-populate our current state of risk because we had already added our current likelihood. Now we can see in this column S, which is the light green column, wherever there is a deviation from our target risk, those cells will be converted into red. So in this case, the first one where we say PCI of 80, those are exceeding our target. So these are not going to be red. There is no variance. On the PCI between 79 and 60, we're saying there is basically meeting our targets. The one that says PCI between 59 to 40, the current state risk is 45, whereas our target risk is 30. So there is obviously a deviation from target risk. And we have a percentage here as 33.3%. Once we identify that there is a deviation, we want to add the estimated cost to meet those asset level of service target. So add how much it will cost us to bring this variance to 0 or exceed our level of service. So in this case, we're saying 550,000 is how much it's going to cost us to bring this asset level of service to our target. in column U, which is the gray column, it gives us the risk cost benefit. So in this case, we're saying it will cost us $37,000 to reduce each risk point. So in this case, we're saying our target is 30, our current risk is 45, so the difference is 15 risk points. To reduce each risk point, it is going to cost us $37,000. Similar to this example, we will follow through all the asset levels of service that we have identified here. Now you can see the current range of asset level of service will keep changing. The performance side here, we have operational functionality target of good. So what we have here as a range is fair, good. There is no percentages. There's just fair, good. There could be excellent, there could be very good, or there could be poor. In this case, we're saying for the 8CB road on the operational functionality, 60% are in fair condition or in fair condition, sorry, and 40% are in good, so meeting our target. Add your current likelihood in here, and based on the consequences that you add here, your residual and current risk will be calculated automatically. Again, you can see in the first one where it says fair, there is a deviation because our target is to stay at good, not fair. So you can see here again, there is a 33.3% variance. Add your cost estimate to bring this variance to our target or exceed our target. It will also give you your risk cost benefit. To reduce each risk point, it will cost us $36,000. Follow through the same model for all the asset levels of service that we have identified. Once all these levels of service are added in here, the distribution is done, the likelihood is done. Filter column S, which is the light green column, where the variances are from the targets, filter that to the red cells only. Once you've filtered that, now filter for column B, where you want to only add your asset levels of service only. So C and P. So you want your condition and performance asset levels of service only, because that's what we are prioritizing in our tab 2. Copy these and then paste them or import them over here. Once you add them here, all this information will automatically be pre-populated. So I'll show you as an example. If you copy these numbers and then add them to this template, it will pre-populate all the information that is required. So what are these columns in this template? It will show you the asset that we are assessing, which is the 8CB road. The second column is the asset level of service type. So whether it's condition or performance, what our asset level of target is. So in this case, we have a PCI of 70 for the first row. What the current asset level of service is. So where there is a deviation, which asset level of service has that deviation, those current asset level of service are added in here, which you can literally see. PCI of 59 to 40 is obviously less than what our target is, PCI of 70. The next one, our target is to be at good. Our PCI 60 to 70 is basically saying it's fair. Here's another example, operational functionality. We're saying our target is a good, but currently it's unfair. So that's why there is deviation from our residual risk or target risk. This column F, which is the dark green, will show you the current state of risk. So what your current risk is. Based on that current risk, your ranking will be provided in column G, which is the orange colored column or the salmon color. Now, based on your current risk, so the higher the risk, the higher the ranking basically. So it gives importance to those current risk that has a higher risk value. So this up to column G completes our operation 1. identifying where the risks are, and then basically ranking them based on the current state of risk. So we've completed our operation 1 up to here. Now we will start our operation 2, which is re-ranking them based on how far off they are from the target. So we have this light green column, column H, which gives you the variance from the residual risk. The next few columns gives us the weighting, and it gives you weighting by if the risk variance is greater than negative 50%, then we want to weight them high. If the risk variance is between 50 and 35, we want to weight them 2. And if it's less than 35, we want to weight them as 1. So in this case, these current state risks are now weighted. Now, since all the variances over here are less than 35%, they are all sitting in this column, which is column K, risk weighting, that is 1. Once these risks are added in here, it will automatically calculate the ranking again, but weighted on these, how far off they are from the residual risk. So now these become our weighted score. We want to now re-rank them based on this weighted score, which is column M. So column M is re-ranking them based on this weighted score, based on how far off they are from the residual target. So the lower the number, the higher the priority. So when it says 1, these levels of service will be given a priority over the rest of the 4 asset levels of service. Now again, so this basically completes our operation 2. Our operation 1 was up to column G, ranking based on current state of risk. Now we have weighted them based on how far off they are from the residual target, and we have re-ranked them. So up to column M, the second orange column, that gives us the operation, the end of operation 2. Now, because there is a tie between these levels of service, what we want to do is add another factor in there, which is the estimated or the risk cost benefit. That will help us reprioritize these rankings. So based on the estimated cost that we had identified to bring this variance to our target or exceed our target, those costs will help us identify where the risk cost benefit is. So in this case, we're saying the first row, which is HCB having a target of PCI of 70, it will cost us $37,000 to bring or reduce 1 risk point. With this, what we can see is that wherever the risk cost benefit or the unit cost to reduce the risk point is cheaper, that's where the priority will start. So in this case, in column O, which is the gray column, 17 is the cheapest from all these asset levels of service. So we will prioritize that as number 1. This is where the risk cost benefit is. It is better to do this first because it costs less and it's bringing down the variance. But the variance here is all similar, 33.3, but we are basing it on the unit cost that it's going to cost us to reduce each risk point. So we will prioritize that as doing the first one. Then we have this one that costs 32,000 to reduce each risk point as the second priority. So that's how the prioritization works. So the lower the number, the higher the benefit. Now, once this prioritization is done, this is based on the asset levels of service. This third tab that we have is same prioritization, but now it is based on an asset class. We have exactly same template as the asset level of service, just that now instead of getting the condition and performance only, what we want is by an asset class, a combination of condition and performance by an asset class. So here you can literally see combined average condition and performance asset level of service for this asset class that we were assessing, which is the HCB road. Copy and paste it in here, and it will pre-populate all the information. The columns are exactly same. Now in this example, we only have one asset class, but same templates can be used or added templates, the rows can be added further down here to add other asset classes. And you will be able to see where the prioritization between the asset classes is going to be. So we have HCB road, there could be LCB road, there could be water pumping station, wastewater pumping station, there could be high lift pumps, there could be different asset classes in here that we can reprioritize and see where the needs are within all the whole portfolio of water supply or wastewater supply or even transportation. So this is a very helpful template to see where prioritization can be done by an asset class. So once this prioritization is done, especially based on asset level of service, we can further or go back into tab 1 and look at the capital plan now. The reason why we do prioritization is because we always have funding constraint. Okay, so here, the financial plan analysis. So this is basically analyzing your capital plan. Once your prioritization is done, you want to add what your priorities are in your capital plan. But it does not mean that whatever you identified as the estimated cost, that is how much you can afford. There could be times when you can't afford to do that asset level of service or fix that asset level of service. And therefore, this could be a 0. But let's say, for example, in this case, we estimated it will cost us $550,000 to bring this variance to our target or 0. But based on our affordability, we can only put 500,000. So we add 500 in our proposed capital plan. Based on this funding, our asset level of service distribution is now going to change. So previously we had a PCI greater than of 80, only 39% of the assets were falling in that range. Now with having 500,000 funding, this is going to change to 52%. So basically we're redistributing the one that was in fair condition to an excellent condition. So we basically did resurfacing and now the assets are in excellent condition. So now the distribution has changed. 52% is for PCI of greater than 80, 48 still stays for PCI ranging 79 to 60. Based on this distribution, we add our likelihood. So now obviously because it's exceeding PCI of 80 is exceeding our level of service target, we're saying very unlikely that there is going to be an asset failure. The second one, it's meeting our target now, which is basically saying it's unlikely there is going to be an asset failure. So now you can see those red cells are gone completely. But if you look at the second example, we still see a red cell because in this one, where the PCI is between 60 and 70%, we require 250,000 to bring this variance down to our residual target. And we can afford to have 250 to bring that to our target. But when you look at the second one, we require 800,000, but we can't afford to have 800,000 in our capital plan. We can only afford to have 500,000. So we add 500,000 here. Based on this funding, now these percentages are going to change. Previously, we only had 20% in the range of PCI of 70 to 80. Now that has changed with the 500 and 250 funding that is available. That's going to change to 70%. We previously had 50% in the range of 60 to 70. Now we have them as 30. So there is still a risk there. There's still deficiencies in this asset level of service, which is shown here in the red cell. So it does not, this basically shows us that even after putting funding in the capital plan, we will be able to see where the risks lie within this asset class. There could be times when we can let go these risks and basically say that, you know what, let it be there. It's not a huge impact to the service. We can focus on the risk where there's huge impact to the services. So in this case, you can see where, based on your capital plan or your budget, where the risks are going to stay. So this is a good template to basically see that as well. So we did prioritization based on asset level of service, asset class, and now we want to get into the asset risk. Similar template that we had for our asset level of service and asset class risk, we have the same template for the asset as well. Now here, what we are trying to assess is by an asset. So in pumping station 1, there could be different assets underneath the pumping station 1. There could be pump system A, there could be pump system B. So different assets. So what we want to do here is assess those each asset. So in this case, we're saying we want to assess our pump system A. We will add our condition and performance asset levels of service here. And then we will add our likelihood, similar way as we did in tab 1. Add your likelihood here, your residual likelihood. So if we had our pump system A at a target of good, if it was in good condition, what is the likelihood of this asset failing? And we're saying it's unlikely this asset is going to fail if it stays at good. What is the current range of this asset level of service? And we're saying currently it's in a fair shape. So fair meaning it's going to be 3, possibility that this asset will fail. So based on that, and then adding the consequences, what the impact is going to be for an asset failure, if there was a malfunction to the pump system A, what is the impact going to be to the services? And what is the impact going to be on the health and safety, on community services, financially? So based on scores 1 to 5, add your scores here based on the impact. Is it going to be a medium impact? Is it going to be a high impact? Environmentally, it's going to be very low impact. So add your consequences here. Once the consequences are added, your residual and your current risk will automatically be calculated. Now you can see here clearly our current state of risk is saying 42 and our target is saying 28. Literally, there is a deviation from the target or the residual risk. In this case, it's saying 33.3% is the variance. Add your estimated cost in here, which is, it's going to cost us 500,000 to bring this variance to our residual risk. And it will also give you your risk cost benefit, meaning for each risk point reduction, it will cost you $36,000. Similarly, that was for condition. We have performance here as well. So operational functionality, our target is to be at good. Our capacity to meet demand target is good as well. Add your likelihood, target likelihood, and also add your current range, where they are currently, what level of service are you performing right now. So in this case, we're saying operational functionality is fair, and the current likelihood is a 3, basically saying possibility that there is going to be an asset failure. For the capacity to meet demand, it's good. Our target is good, and it's currently in good state as well. So we say that it's going to, the likelihood will be same as our target. So once that is done, add your consequence scores here, what the impact is going to be on these consequence categories if there is a failure of an asset. Once the consequences are added, your residual and your current risk will be automatically be calculated. And based on this calculation, we can literally see the operational functionality. There is a deviation from the residual or the target risk, and that's why this is colored red. It will cost us 200,000 to bring this variance down to 0. It also gives you the risk cost benefit, so it will cost you 13,000 to reduce each risk point. On the second one, since we are at target, there is nothing that we need to do right now. Once that information is completed, it will give you overall a combined average condition and performance asset level of service, and total cost required to bring them to the target. You can see here the total combined condition and performance. Your target risk is 29, but you're currently at 40. So there is a difference already right there. And the variance is approximately 27%. And it will cost us 700,000 to bring this variance down to zero, which translates into $65,000 per risk point. This last line, which is already colored blue, this number is what you need to bring to the priority model. Once you add that number, all the rest of the information will be pre-populated. Again, exactly same template as our asset level of service priority model and the asset class priority model. Now, in this case, we only have one example as the pump system A. We could have a pump system B, we could have pump system C, and based on their rankings and their risk cost benefit, we can literally see where the priority lies. Should we be doing or working on pump system C first and then A, or should we be doing B first and then C? So this is a really good tool to see within an asset where the deficiencies lie. So that's basically the end of my presentation on risk assessment and prioritization. Again, quickly summarizing, if you look at the tab 2, asset level of service priority model, our operation 1 that we talked about, identifying the variances from residual, add those here, and they get ranked based on the current state of risk. Once these are ranked, then they're further weighted based on how far off they are from their residual, and then re-ranked based on that weighted score. So this is completion of operation 2. Since we have a tie here, we use another factor in there, which is the risk cost benefit. This will help us identify clearly where the risk cost benefit is, and whichever one is cheapest in this column, or which is the gray column, whichever unit cost is cheaper, that's where the priority lies. And all this information then can be fed back in here into the capital plan to see where the risks are going to be once your capital plan or your budget is done.